So we get some presentation stuff running here. Right, so just as a bit of a starter, I'm just going to do an hour, give or take, just a bit of an introduction to Excel. It's not supposed to be anything too heavy. So I've spoken to myself and Emma have spoken a little bit about potentially putting a series of sessions together over the sort of 6 weeks, the summer holiday sort of period. So I want to start with something fairly straightforward and fairly simple to start with, and then hopefully build it up over the course of those 7 weeks, 6-7 weeks. I don't really want to start too detailed to start with. So just if my computer decides it wants to work, yeah. So we're just going to look at Excel for accounting, just a bit of a basic understanding of some of the key components of things we need to understand, which quite useful for everybody, but specifically sort of aligned to the management accounting techniques exam at level 3, which is where really in the AAT world, that's where we test student skills on Excel. It's not really tested anywhere else. But, as other people have said, it's a very worthwhile sort of life skill, really. Something that we definitely want to be able to do, especially, when you enter the industry. You'll use an Excel spreadsheet every day of your working life in the bookkeeping and accounting world. So it's useful that we understand our way around spreadsheets. So the first bit of tonight is going to be me talking a little bit about what we're going to talk about, just explaining some key concepts, and then I'm going to dive into a bit of a demo, show you some stuff in Excel, and then we'll see how we get on. So aim of tonight then really for me is to just demonstrate some Excel basics. I'm going to try and make it a little bit, instead of it being dry and boring, I'm almost going to try and make it a little bit more real world. So we're going to try and build up a trial balance using Excel, introducing a small number of Excel techniques. Obviously, we're not going to demonstrate every Excel technique in a 1 hour session. That's an unrealistic expectation to start with. So to set the expectation at the beginning that we're going to look at what we're going to cover, formatting of cells within an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to look at 3 specific formulas in a little bit of detail. So you can see on the page the sum, the if, and the VLOOKUP functions. So we're going to explain what each one of those are and how you might use them and what those functions would give you, and why it might be useful to at least look at using those. Going to look at this concept of conditional formatting and why that might be useful. So to format, but we'll look at it in a little bit of detail in a bit, but essentially formatting certain cells based on certain conditions being met. And then ultimately, in the demo that I do, which will demonstrate the practical implementation of some of that stuff above, we're going to build up a trial balance. And hopefully it'll balance if Dean does it properly. It's always a good thing for it to balance. So, cell formatting then. So I might be teaching people to suck eggs here a little bit, but some of the key things you can do with cell formatting, it's a bit like any other Microsoft product. You can bold, italic, underline the various elements within the cells. You can format numbers in lots of different ways. So you might precede the numbers with currency symbol, whether that's UK pound, Great British pounds, or whether that's US dollars, euros. You can put decimal. You can adjust the number of decimal places on numbers. So it might be that you want to round the numbers to the nearest pound, so you don't want any decimal places. It might be that you want the numbers to pounds and pence, so you might have 2 decimal places. It might even be that you want more than 2. You know, you can adjust that as required, and I'll show you how to do that in a little while. One of my pet hates with Excel spreadsheets, and one thing that, you know, having worked in the industry for a good number of years, is where people don't adjust the column widths and stuff. And anyone who's seen an Excel spreadsheet will know that you can just keep typing to the end of time, and it just overflows it. Unless you wrap the cells, wrap the text, it just overflows the cells. And it's one of Dean's pet hates that people don't adjust columns so that content fits within columns. I'll show you how you do that as well in a little while. You can align text left, right, and centre, top, bottom, middle of cells. Lots of reasons why you might want to do that. And that's all really about making your spreadsheets, dare I say it, pretty and usable. Doesn't really aid anything functionally, does it? It just makes it look, you know, it's all around the presentation. And then you can fill certain cells in certain colours. That can aid readability, especially if you want to highlight certain parts of the data to certain, you know. So some examples, you might not necessarily fill the cells, but certainly numbers within cells, you might colour them red if they're, you know, if they're negative numbers, for example, just to draw people's attention to the numbers. They're all things you can do with cell formatting. So moving on a little bit then from that basic sort of cell formatting concept, is anyone who uses an Excel spreadsheet, where the real power comes from Excel spreadsheets is all the functions that you can use to do lots of things, like calculate, well, as you can see here, calculate totals. So add up a bunch of cells and calculate a total. It's much quicker than us getting a calculator out and adding them up. Yeah, we can just use an inbuilt sum function that'll just add up a range of cells. So as it says here, some function just literally used to add values together that are held in certain cells. So the example here, we've got all functions in Excel are preceded with the equal sign, equals sum, open bracket, C2 to C8. So what's that saying is all the cells from C2 to C8, so that's C2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Let's just take the values out of all of those cells and add them all up. Yeah. Now, there's lots of reasons why we might want to do that. You know, we're trying to, I don't know, like we'll demonstrate later, we're trying to add all the credits up on a trial balance, for example. We might just have a sum that adds all the credits up, a sum that adds all the debits up, and then some check to make sure that debits equal credits. So it's a fairly simplistic function, but one that I can almost guarantee you'll use every day if you use an Excel spreadsheet. Now, the next function that I'm going to introduce is the one that generally people see for the first time and they're like, what is this? Yeah, so this is the if function. Now, that first line there where it says is used for logical tests, that is really what it's all about. Yeah, so what it does is it's a function, so it's preceded with the equal sign, if, open brackets. The first thing you want to then say is you want a logical test. Now, without getting all mathematical, it needs to be something that delivers a Boolean value. So it's either true or false. Yeah, so it's just literally something that's either true or false. And then we have a comma after that test, and then we say, well, what are we going to do then if that logical test is true? And then we have another comma and we say, well, what are we going to do if it's not true, i.e. it's false? So the example at the bottom then says, if C2, whatever the value in C2 is greater than whatever the value in D2 is, then in this particular case, we're going to return a piece of text that says debit. And if it's false, we're going to return a piece of text that says credit. Now, we'll use this later when in an example I'm going to show you, but that is literally as complicated as it is. Yeah, so what you're saying is C2 greater than D2? Well, it either is or it isn't. And if it is, it must be a debit. If it's not, it must be a credit. And then the final function I want to look at, talk about, and then we'll do an example of in a little while, is another one that this is tested on the management accounting techniques exam, and something that students get very confused with. Some people, well, you either get it or you don't, and you always fit in two camps. Yeah, get it or you don't, and then those that don't get it, it takes some time for them to understand what this is actually doing. But essentially, a VLOOKUP, it's one of a number of lookup functions. I'm not going to talk about all of them tonight, but it's one of a number of lookup functions. And the V lookup stands for vertical, so it's a vertical lookup, so it looks vertically. You can get H lookups that look horizontally, and then for those that are, in the know, you can get X lookups which can do both. So a VLOOKUP just literally, it's used to search for values vertically down a list of values, essentially. Yeah. So the syntax, or how we do this in an Excel spreadsheet, again, it's a function, so it's preceded with an equal sign. So VLOOKUP, yeah, and then this is where it starts to get complicated, is the first thing is, what is it you want to look up? So what is the value that I want to look up in this big long list of values that we've got? So the lookup value is the first bit, yeah, then a comma, and then this thing that's known as a table array, which is essentially the big long list of the things we want to look up the value in. Now, it's not just one column of values, it's almost a table, yeah, and the leftmost column of that is where we're going to look up the values. And then the column index number is, well, from that table then, once we've looked up this value, which column am I interested in returning the value of? So it might be that we've got, I don't know, account codes in the leftmost column, and in the next column we've got the account name, and we want to look up an account code that we know in this big list, in this table, and pull back the account name, which in our case is in the second column. Yep. So we'd have lookup value, our account code in the table, which is the table with the account codes, the account names, and lots of other details. Column number then, column number 2, and then this range lookup. Now that's optional. You don't need to put that in. But essentially, you can say whether or not you wish it to be approximate values or exact matches. Now, I personally, I've been doing this for years. I don't see any real reason why you'd want an approximate match and not a real, if you're looking up a value in a table, you're looking up a value in the table. You want an exact match. You don't want something that might be a match, something that's somewhere near. You want an exact match. I personally can't remember a time when I've said, go and look up something that's close to that and not exactly that. I pretty much always would use it exact values. So as an example at the bottom there, you can use it, like I said, to find account names using an account code. So if you've got an account code, just a nominal ledger code, you can use that to find an account name. We'll demonstrate how to do that in a minute. So conditional formatting then. So another really powerful thing that you can do in Excel is highlight certain cells if certain conditions are true. So the typical thing to do is to highlight certain values if they're below 0, for example. So if you've got, I don't know, you've got some management accounting report, so management accounts report in doing some variance analysis, yeah, you might highlight variances. Well, some people will highlight all variances that are, negative variances. They'll highlight those in a certain colour. Obviously, anyone who's done any work on variance analysis will know that most companies would say, well, we've got some tolerance to variances, and variances more than X%, we'll highlight that to management. So it might be that you just conditionally format the cells just to highlight very quickly to management that, well, that's a variance that you might want to look at. So you can highlight values above or below certain thresholds. You can also use like what's known as colour scales. So where is it on that scale between good and bad, essentially? And we're going to use it in my example to highlight some cells that don't have values in. So we're going to create this chart balance with debits and credits in, and we're going to highlight any cells that don't have numbers in, which we'll demonstrate when I get there. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of some of what I've just talked about. Yeah. So I'm going to load up Excel, and we're going to talk a little bit around what I've, practically demonstrate some of what I've talked through. So we're going to look at those functions that I've talked about, formatting, the various formulas, and we're going to demonstrate sums, totals, lookups, bit of everything. If anyone's got any questions as we go through it, just shout. I don't bite. Right, so Excel then. So first thing I'm going to do is where I am at the top here. Yeah, A1. These things are known as cells. Yeah, and you can type into these. Yeah, type on your keyboard. Yeah, and I'm going to put account code in there. Yeah, then I'm going to put an account name in that column there. Debit in pounds. Credit in pounds. You can all see where this is going. And I'm just going to, you wouldn't have this in the real world, but I'm just going to put balance type in there. Now, as Dean sort of said earlier, that's all great, but one of his pet hates is we can't see what that actually says. It says account code. We're not buying fish, are we? It's an account code, not an account code. Yeah, so what I generally do to adjust these columns so they all fit the content is we click at the top left here where my mouse is, right at the top left there. That'll select every single thing on that worksheet. Yeah, and then if you move your mouse across this top A, B, C, D, E, F, G column, and you'll notice the mouse changes, the cursor changes to like 2 sideways arrows. Yeah, if you double click then, it'll adjust everything so you can see everything. Yeah, so it's a good way of just adjusting the columns so that they fit the content that's within the columns. So I'm going to start putting some data in here, but before I do, I'm going to format these column headers so they stand out a little bit. Yeah, so we're just going to bold all these column headers. So just on the top here, see this little B here, just click that, bold everything. Yeah, And then we're going to start typing some account codes in here. So I'm just going to make these up as I go along. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put some account names in just to make this a little bit more real. So we'll call this sales revenue. We'll call this purchases. Yeah, if I spell it wrong, somebody tell me, because I can't spell for the topic. As utilities. Might spell that wrong, but whatever. Wages. Bank and capital. And then we're going to put some numbers in. Now, just going to randomly put some numbers into these. Hopefully, my brain's working still, and this will add up when I get to the bottom. Now, if my maths is right, that won't add up, but I don't want it to right now anyway. Yeah, right. So we've got a load of numbers in there. Well, that's all great, but there's 11,000 what? Yeah, well, we know it's pounds, but it's likely that we'd want to format these numbers so they look a bit prettier than what we've got there. So there's two things we can do. In the middle of the screen here, you've got, oops, in the middle of the screen somewhere here, you've got this option where it says, well, if we select all the numbers, show that little lot. Yeah, in the middle of the screen, you've got this thing that says general. Now, you can format these numbers in lots of different ways. We could format it as currency, we can format it as just a number. Yeah, we can do lots of different things. So if we formatted it as a number, it won't, all it'll do is just stick a couple of decimal places at the end. That's great. But we might not want that. Oops. What we might want to put 1,000 separators in there. Yeah. Now, the 1,000 separators, you can just click account in there, and it'll, well, that'll put decimal, the currency signs at the beginning. Quickest way if you want 1,000 separators is this little comma at the bottom here. Yeah. Click that, you'll get 1,000 separators. Now that's great, but again, might not be quite what I want. Yeah, what I might want, yeah, is currency, which just formats it, tells me what currency it's in. Yeah, pounds, formats it, puts some decimal places at the end. So let's go with that for now. Yeah, like there's lots of different options here that you can use. Yeah, if it's something that you specifically want, you can click on more number formats. You can see all sorts of different things. Yeah. Like put negative numbers in, like you might want to put negative numbers in red in brackets. There's lots of different options. Yeah, you can pick which options you want. Right, so that's the simplistic bit, if you like. So that's all we've done there is we've just typed everything in, made this bold, typed a load of numbers in. I've typed a load of account codes, a load of account names, typed some numbers in. That's great. It's a trial balance. You probably want to know if it balances. Yeah, so I'm going to put a totals line in bottom here. And now we want to see whether this thing actually balances. Now, the observant amongst you will be able to see that it clearly doesn't balance. Yeah. But if we, so you've almost got three ways you can do this. So we're going to put a function in here to sum up everything from C2 to C8. That's three options. Yeah. One is to click this button here that says insert function. So it looks like an F with an X at the end. Yeah. So if we click that, and it might look a little bit different on a Windows machine. I do apologise. If I click sum here and insert function, so it'll come up with the most recently used ones. Yeah. If I insert function there, you'll see how it's on the right-hand side here, or I'll move it to the middle so you can see it. It tells me what it's going to sum up. Now, I don't want to sum C3 to C9. I want to do C2 to C8. Yeah. Now, I apologise for the small screen, but about where my mouse is, it tells you what the result of that will be. Yeah. So you can always check what it's doing. Now, the great thing with this formula builder is this bit at the bottom here. Yeah. So you're in the exam. So you're in your maths exam, and you're doing your Excel spreadsheet, and you ain't got a bloody clue. You've forgotten. Your brain's gone dead. You know you need to add some numbers up, so you're pretty sure it's a sum, but you can't remember how to do it. Yeah. What you can do is you can press the little insert function button, which does work in the maths exam, and it'll bring this up. And it says here, doesn't it? Adds all numbers in range of cells. Yeah. Sum, number 1, number 2. Yeah. And you can almost use that as an idea of what it is you need to do and how to actually do it. Yeah. So we're just going to press enter on that, and that'll stick the resulting number, 16,000, into cell C10. Yeah. We'll get rid of the formula builder. To show you the opposite way of doing it. Another way of doing it is on the top bar of the spreadsheet here. Oops. You've got this little Greek symbol back where my mouse is. Yeah. We click that there. Yeah. Now it don't quite work. And the reason it didn't quite work is because there's gaps in numbers. But you could then alter that D2 to D8. And then the third way you could do it is obviously just freehand type it in. So if I get rid of that one, you could just do equals sum bracket, yeah, C2 colon C8, close bracket. And we can see that what we've now got is a trial balance that unfortunately doesn't balance. Yeah, so that's our first function, sum function. Massively, massively useful. You'll use it every day in your life. Once you've learned how to use it, you'll use it everywhere. Yeah. Now, second thing I want to do then is an if statement. So I want to stick in this balance type here. I want to stick an if function that says, is the balance of sales revenue a credit or a debit? Now we've all got eyes and we can all see that it's a credit. Yeah, credit balance of £15,000. Yeah. What I want to do then is write an if function in E2 that quickly tells me whether or not it's a credit or debit. Yeah. So if we remember the if function, so it just equals again, if bracket, and it's almost telling you now what to do. Logical test. So I need something that says, is something true or false? Yeah, so does it give a Boolean output, i.e. true or false? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, is C2, which is the debit column, is the debit column, yeah, greater than the credit column? Yeah, because if it is, it must be a debit. Yeah, makes logical sense. And if it's not, for now, we're going to go with it must be a credit then. Yep. So I've got a very simple if statement that says if the debit column is greater than the credit column, it's a debit. Otherwise, it's a credit. Press enter, it tells me it's a credit. Now, another one of Dean's pet hates, and one thing that he sees all his students do is, well, they've done that once, Let's go and do the same thing again. Yeah. So let's, bearing in mind you're in an exam, this exam is timed, you've only got so long to do things. Yeah. You're not gonna start doing all this, are you? Yeah. So that's a debit again. Yeah, or it's a credit. You're not going to be doing that, are you? And imagine there's 20 lines here. You've got to write the same thing 20 times. You're not going to do that. Yeah, you're going to do it once. Yeah, and then you're just going to copy it. Yeah, so bear in mind, we've got this in, where is it, E2. We want it all the way down, this column E, all the way down to E8. So if you write the bottom right, sorry, of this cell, if you look at the mouse will change to black crosshairs rather than white ones. Hold the left mouse button and just drag it and let go. Yeah. Now we've just typed, we've got what, 8 formulas, 7 formulas in there now, but I've only actually typed it once. So type it once and copy it where you need it. Yeah, but only ever type it once. Don't type it 7 times. You ain't got time in the maths exam, you ain't got time to type things 7 times. Yeah. So that's our simple if statement. Now, just because I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, what happens if I did that? It's not a credit, is it? Because debits equal credit, so it's not a credit balance, is it? It's not a credit balance, it's not debit balance. So it don't quite work then, does it? Yeah, so maybe we need to fix it. Yeah, so one way we can fix this then, and almost I'm taking it one step further, is this concept of nested if statements. Now, this is something that's definitely tested on level 3 management accounting techniques, is essentially embedding another if statement within your first if statement. So now you've got nested if statements. So what we're going to say here, I'm going to change this to say, well, if C2 is greater than D2, so debits are greater than credits, it must therefore be a debit. Otherwise, I'm going to do another test to say, are credits greater than debits? So is D2 greater than C2? And if it is, it must therefore be a credit, right? And if it's not, well, we probably need to check it because it's probably not right. So I'm just going to put check in there. So now we do that. That is a credit, obviously it is. Nothing's changed there. But if we copy this down, you'll see that the balance type in E3 will change to check. Probably want to check it because it's unlikely that debits and credits are the same value. Unlikely. Especially in the case of purchases. It's not like you're going to get debits and credits the same value, is it? But so we get rid of that for a minute. Still got an unbalanced trial balance. So we've done the if statements, we've done the sum statements at the bottom. So sum functions, if functions. Next thing I want to do then is some conditional formatting. So what I want to say is all of these, and it's probably not the greatest real world example, but it just shows you how this thing works. So I'm going to select all the numbers, and what we're going to do is we're going to highlight any cells where there isn't a number, yeah, or where there's no value in them, yeah, just to demonstrate what conditional formatting is and how it works and some of the power that it can give you. So I'm going to select all those numbers, and then you've got the conditional formatting option, yeah. middle of the screen. Yeah. So we'll click on conditional formatting, and we're going to highlight cell rules. Yeah. And we're going to do it where it's equal to a value. Yeah. So we're going to highlight all cell rules where the value is equal to a value. Yeah. So what we're going to do is so then this brings up another window that you can see here. Yeah. Which says we want to only format cells that contain a given value. Now, our given value is just going to be two double quotes, i.e. completely empty cell. Yeah. So where the cell value is completely empty cell, and we'll do, I don't know, we'll do customize the format. We'll fill the cells with, we'll make them green for argument's sake. Yeah. Now, if we press OK on that, it didn't work. What did Dean do wrong? Oh, Dean didn't need the double quotes, did he? Yeah, so just equals double quotes might help. Yeah, that'll be the one. There you go. So you can tell I didn't practice this before I did it. Yeah. So yeah, so just again, let me delete all this and redo it. Yeah, so if we click conditional formatting, highlight cell rules equal to, and we're just going to, so cell values equal to, and in there just equals two double quotes. You can customize the format however you wish it to be. We're going to, in our particular case, we're just going to do, I don't know, some sort of light green background of some sort. And you'll see that it's highlighted everything that doesn't have a value with light green. Now, if I type a number in there, yeah, in this sales revenue, in the debit, I mean, not that sales revenue would ever be a debit, but if I type a number in there, yeah, it gets rid of the formatting because it's now got a number. Yeah. So that's just your conditional formatting. You can do all sorts of things like you could, highlight certain numbers if they were above or below certain, if numbers were negative, for example, you could colour them in red. That's quite a common use case for conditional formatting. It's not the only one, but it's quite common. Okay, right. Next thing I want to do then, or the final thing I want to do before I sort of open it up for some questions and whatever else, is look at VLOOKUPs. Yeah, so I'm just going to set up another worksheet here. So one thing I didn't mention is these worksheets at the bottom. You can have lots of different worksheets within what's known as a workbook. So the whole Excel spreadsheet's a workbook. Yeah, and within that you can have worksheets. We've only got one at the moment, conveniently called Sheet 1. Now I'm going to change the name just so we've got some idea what the hell this is. So this is the chart balance. And I'm going to create another sheet, and I'm going to call this chart of accounts. Yeah. So what I'm going to do in here is let me blow this up so you can actually see it. Or try to. Right, so let's go for account code, account name. Yeah. Now I'm going to make this quite straightforward. I'm just going to copy them out of there, put them in there. Yeah. So this is my chart of accounts, and it could have other stuff in there. So let's have put drawings in here just for argument's sake. Yeah. And then what we can do in here, at the moment, our account codes are all just they're all just what I typed in earlier. Yeah, well, that's great. But let's say we change this to, we don't call it sales revenue anymore. We call it, I don't know, internet sales revenue. Yeah, well, it's not changed on there, as it's not changed on the trial balance. Yeah. Or maybe we'd want it to change on the trial balance. Maybe we'd want a centralized chart of accounts. Yeah, and a trial balance that's got account codes and the account names. It goes and gets those from the agreed chart of accounts. Yeah. So we can do that using, so we can get rid of all these, and we can do this using VLOOKUPs. Yeah. So I'm going to demonstrate it again using this insert function tool. Yeah. So click on that. We get the formula builder. You can search in here for whatever it is you're looking for. So we know we want to do a VLOOKUP. So if I start typing VLOOKUP in there, it tells me what it is. Looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table, then returns a value in the same row from a column you specify. Yeah, by default, the table must be in ascending order. Yeah, right. So I'm going to do a VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up this account code. Yeah, so the lookup value will be this account code here, this 1000 that's in A2. Yeah. The table array will be this entire table. Now, we'll come back to another point I'm going to make about that in a minute. Yeah. Column index, well, we look back there. Yeah, I probably want the second column, don't I? Yeah. Probably want the second column. And a range lookup, if you look down the syntax here, range lookup, yeah, is a logical value to find the closest match in the first column, sorted in ascending order equals true, or omitted, find an exact match. So if you don't put anything, it'll find an exact match. Yeah. But you can also type the word false in there if you wish to. Yeah. You don't need to because it defaults to false anyway. Yeah. So defaults to exact matches. If you press enter now, it will return into column B2 the account name related to account code 1000 from my chart of accounts, which should, fingers crossed, return internet sale revenue, which it does. Yeah, fix the column. Yeah. Now, if I just copy this downwards, it will probably work. Yeah, which it will. But any observant person, if you're observant amongst you, will notice that the formula has actually changed. As I copy this formula down, it's actually changed. Yeah. So it says chart of accounts A1 to B9. So chart of accounts A1 to B9, A1 to B9. That's all of that. But if you look at this particular formula, yeah, it's looking at A2 to B10. Which is probably, again, all right, because it covers all the codes. What about that one? A3 to B11. A3 to B11. Well, what happens then if I put 1000 in there? Oh dear, I don't know what that is. Well, it's a valid account code, isn't it? Yeah. So what happens if you don't do anything? What happens is every time you copy this formula down, it shifts the cell references downwards. It's probably not what you want to do. Yeah. Now, in a Windows version of Excel, which is not what I've got because I'm on a Mac here, but in a Windows version of Excel, you can just press F4 and it'll do what's known as absolute cell referencing. Yeah, and it'll fix the cell references so that they don't change as you move the formulas left and right. Now, it's more complicated than that, and it's something for another night. But what we want to do here is ultimately fix all these cell references. So we can just do that by putting $signs in front of both the letters and the numbers. Yeah, so $A, $1, colon, $B, $9. Press enter. And now if I copy that downwards, you'll notice that it says A1 to B9 all the way. Yeah, down. So if I did something daft like change that to 1,000, it would return internet sales revenue. Yeah, so that is our if statements over here. Yeah, nested if. We've got some functions at the bottom to add things up. Yeah, we've got lookups here. Yeah, and then we're going to make this whole thing balance. Yeah, so I'm going to copy that formula down there, type 4,000 in there, which is the account code for drawings. Yeah, and then I'm going to put £10,000 of drawings in there. It now balances, and the balance type there, we just copy that formula from above. Yeah, which is a debit, and everyone's happy because it all balances. Yeah, so just a very quick example of how you can use some of the functions within Excel to help build nice fancy chart balances. You use these functions for lots of different things. Doesn't necessarily always have to be about work or even about studying. Lots of people have their own personal household budgets. You can manage that in a spreadsheet. You can have all sorts of fancy things, saying, well, we overspent this month, and highlight that in a nice fancy colour, and then give it your husband or wife and say, stop spending. Yeah, so I hope that was at least somewhat useful.